Hey everyone, it's Patrick here with the ADHD Journeys on Substack and then Patrick.Casale everywhere else. I want to talk about what I am thinking as palatable versions of autism in mainstream society. Someone reached out to me yesterday letting me know that they were writing a similar book to mine, the one that I'm publishing in a year with Hachette on Balance, the imprint that I'm publishing for, called So You're Autistic, ... Now what? And it's really like a support and survival guide for people who are diagnosed autistic later in life, because I was diagnosed when I was 35, and I've learned a lot in the last 5 years. And I just want to share it so people feel less alone. But someone reached out to me the other day and was like, hey, I just want to let you know, you're publishing a book that I kind of was creating as well. A different version, obviously, from a different perspective, but a very similar title. And they were like, I'll be very honest, it kind of sucks to hear that when I pitched it to my publisher and my agent, they told me that there are enough books like this out there from white authors, and yours being one of them. And that really hit me. Like, I'm aware of my privilege all the time. I'm actually hyper aware of it. It's fucking annoying sometimes because I think about it in every situation and every second and want to talk about it constantly with people who are just like, okay, dude, enough is enough. We get it. You're a white guy. We know. It's obvious. But the reality is that we see on social media, especially in the autistic and ADHD advocacy spaces, mostly in the autistic advocacy spaces, in my opinion. But I also spend a lot more time there, so maybe I'm biased. People are going to flock to people who look like me. I started building an Instagram account a couple of years ago for All Things Private Practice, my other business that I own, which is all about helping entrepreneurs start and grow their businesses and all that stuff. It probably maxed out at like 7,000 people. And then I pivoted and I changed the name to Patrick.Casale, and I just started sharing about my autistic ADHD journey, burnout, especially my own lived experiences, trying to make things relatable, putting wording to things that some people have a really hard time articulating or communicating to help people feel less alone. That's always been the mission foundationally. That's my why of like, how do we make people feel less alone? To connect us as humans and to make sure that there is light at the end of the tunnel and hope and optimism and that there can be a way that we can relate to one another, even though when we feel our experiences are really lonely or really isolating, or as if they only impact us, until we realize there's a whole community of us, air quotes. So that's always been my mission. And that's evolved over the last 5 years. And as Dr. Megan Anna Neff and I did divergent conversations and platforms grew and audiences grew, reputability grows, know, like, and trust grows, becoming like a quote unquote authority figure. But in reality, I'm not a researcher. I've never been a mental health clinician who loved research. It baffles my mind. It hurts my brain trying to read and interpret studies. And I'm always very honest about that. That's not something I shy away from talking about. But the reality is my experiences are just my experiences. And I try to help make people feel like they can identify and connect to them. And now I'm talking a lot about Ehlers-Danlos and POTS, or postural orthostatic tachycardia, and MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome, because I experience all of that. And it sucks really badly. It's fucking painful. Every day hurts. My joints are so just excruciatingly painful that I can't sleep most nights. I can't get comfortable in my own body. And I haven't been able to for a long time. But anyway, I'm not going to diverge too much, which I have a tendency to do. But the reality is, for me, I realize my audience is now on Instagram, like almost 72,000 people, and increasing on Substack and Facebook and TikTok and YouTube and everywhere under the sun where content is produced. And that person that reached out to me, I was thinking about that, like how demoralizing it has to be to consistently see white faces come in to these advocacy spaces. We're also marginalized as white people who are autistic or ADHD, who are also dealing with co-occurring medical conditions and chronic illnesses and layers of disability, but we do have significantly more privilege in the fact that we are white. That's just a reality in our world, unfortunately. And it's something that I'm very aware of. And then because I'm a man and I'm a cis het white guy with a master's degree in mental health counseling, there's like layers of privilege on that. I don't have to disclose that I'm autistic or ADHD and disabled. I don't have to disclose, although I think it's pretty obvious at this point, that my body is physically in chronic pain all the time, that I'm dealing with all of these medical conditions, but I don't have to disclose that stuff. If I'm having a good day, it's very, you would never notice. You would never know. I can suppress my stimming in public if I want to. I can mask with the best of them. Probably associate and blame my complex trauma history as well as my ADHD for being able to be more social and to be able to mask a bit easier in and out of conversation. A lot of people don't have that privilege. A lot of people can't suppress stimming or autistic traits. A lot of people can't mask in public, though they would like to because it would be safer to, because maybe they're moderate or high support needs and they have to stim or they don't have control over some of their behaviors and their experiences. And maybe they're melting down in public more often, which creates a whole nother danger in itself. Or maybe they don't get to decide when they can unmask freely. You know, we see a lot of autistic content creators, and I used to be this person, no longer, being like, you have to unmask at all costs. It's life or death, unmasking. But the reality is, like, for Black and brown people and for trans people, it's life or death in the opposite direction with unmasking. So for me, I think about masking as like masking fatigue, separation from self. Dr. Neff talks about like diffusion from self a lot. The neurological depletion that you experience, the autistic burnout that comes with it, the depression, the anxiety, the suicidality, all from masking for long periods of time. And there's lots of research to back that up. But that does not mean that people who do not look like me can go into public and just unmask freely in the workplace or in the school zones or in social situations or just in general. That's just not a reality for a lot of people. And I think having just gone through April, an autism awareness / acceptance month, or whatever you're calling it, where you're listening to, is that the mainstream media and society wants autistic people who look like me, who are low support needs, who, you know, are out in society creating and producing, who are business owners, who are quote unquote successful in society's eyes, who are quote unquote contributing in society's eyes. And they want to push that narrative. Like, here's the quote unquote, I keep saying quote unquote, here's the remedy for the autistic existence and experience. Is like, look at all these autistic people who are doing all of these things. They're not so broken. They're not so defective. But the reality is, like, when we start to move into functionality and functioning labels, we are leaving an entire population of marginalized and vulnerable autistic people behind, because we're essentially placing value and worth on productivity, which capitalism and ableism do quite a good job of. And then all of a sudden it's like, see, we can handle these autistic people. Those are the ones that like fly under the radar. Look how well they're functioning. But, you know, as a low support needs autistic person with a lot of masking fatigue and injury and trauma and chronic exhaustion and depletion and neurological just devastation, an autistic burnout that has been hellacious, all these chronic medical conditions, chronic pain, chronic illness, chronic insomnia, the list goes on and on. I'm very disabled, but the world doesn't have to know that. And they get to make their own assumptions. And their assumptions are going to be a lot quicker to default to saying things like, oh, he's just really high functioning, or like, he's not really struggling, or like, he's so successful, blah, 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 blah. And it really creates this distancing and dividing between low support needs, especially late in life identifying autistic white people. And then a lot of autistic people who have been here saying these things for years, for generations, who are Black, brown, Asian, indigenous, queer, trans, etc., who are like, what the fuck? I've been saying this stuff for decades. I've been saying this stuff for like the last 5 years and nobody's paying attention. On social media, how come the likes and the comments and the algorithm favors white faces? And it's true, it does. I mean, there's no denying that. And it's like society wants this like palatable, tolerable version of autism, this very like buttoned up version that they can feel like they can present and say like, we can stomach this. But it's really layers of marginalization for Black and brown and trans and queer people, or for gender expansive people who are like, I've been saying the same shit. I have different perspectives. I have different outtakes on this. I have different lived experience. I've had to deal with all of these layers of marginalization in society, from like racism and sexism and homophobia and transphobia and all of the ways that, and misogyny and living in patriarchy. Like, and it just sucks to know that that is a reality where people who don't look like me are always going to be treated poorly by the masses, by the people in power, by the people who make decisions. Even the research that gets done on autism or ADHD or on a lot of the things I'm talking about is predominantly done on affluent, middle-class white people. So you're missing the global majority in that. And you are sanitizing and presenting this clean, sleek, polished version of what you think autism should be or look like or present. And it's bullshit. There are so many autistic people out there who know so much more about autism than I do. That's just facts. Like, I discovered I was autistic at 35. I'm 39 now. I've learned a lot. I've unlearned a lot. And there are people who have known this their entire lives. There are people who have done deep dives in all of the research out there, like Callie of Black Spectrum Scholar, the creator behind ADHD Academic. There are so many. I could list them forever. Tiffany Hammond of Fidgets and Fries, like people who are having to go out in public and defend themselves or their family, or having to defend themselves to online attacks and bullying and discrediting because of what they look like or how they present or level of support needs. And it's just this bias that is implicit and deeply rooted in all of these communities. And it really fucking sucks. And all I would implore you to do is to try so hard to listen to autistic people and to support autistic people who do not look like me. You should still support people who look like me. We all need support. But there are people who need an extra helping hand, who need an extra, piece of the pie because of how they've been treated historically and how they continue to be treated in 2026. So I just want to encourage you to all think about that. When you start to think about the autistic experience, what immediately comes to mind to you? Who comes to mind to you? And who does not? And to really, really pay attention to that as you move forward into trying to unravel and deconstruct your own internalized ableism, and to deconstruct a society that is unfortunately top-sided and lopsided. So I just want to encourage you all to look at other resources, listen to other creators, read other perspectives, learn about other existences. It will only do you good. It will only help you be a better person. The only thing we can do is support one another, because community is really all we have foundationally. And I just want to leave you with that thought. Thanks for listening.